Welcome, BMP Nation. I'm Matt Seba, your host, and we have a comment. Great podcast. After the first listen, I was left wondering about the term primary vocation, which I've always associated with either God's call to the religious life or to marriage. So I listened again and took note that you did not use this term. I did not. I did a little more digging on it, but I'm still a little foggy. Can you speak to how the mission you're talking about in this podcast meshes with the Catholic ideas about vocation? It seems like mission and vocation are not exactly the same thing. Thanks. Okay, so this is pretty interesting. I did a quick dive. Okay, I have a number of different books. There's a Catechism of the Council of Trent. This is fantastic. It's also available digitally for free, so you can access that and you can search terms like vocation. There's also the Catechism Explained by Spirago and Clark, which is an explanation of the Catechism of Trent. It kind of extrapolates out a lot of the concepts, uses stories to help make them more accessible to people like me. It's a really good resource. Anyways, that's available for free in PDF as well. You just have to do a quick search on the internet for it. Those two books are the primary research references that I used in this. And Google Ngram Viewer. That's Google Ngram Viewer. Do you know what that is? It's when you type in a keyword in a little search bar, and then it pops up with a line graph showing the frequency of usage of certain words. And so I did that with a usage of the word vocation to marriage, or the phrase vocation to marriage. It seems that the first time that was used was in the late 1800s, the term vocation to marriage. And then, because you can search from like 1500 or 1547 all the way to present day. So like 1899 was the first time that vocation to marriage was ever written, at least in English, in a book. Written in a book. So then doing marriage vocation, that seemed to be even later. There's a little spike there around 1850, and I looked that up, and all the uses of marriage vocation, it was listing out 5 things like sacraments, education, comma, marriage, comma, vocation, comma, retirement, or something like that. So it was in a list, because even though you only put marriage vocation without a comma, it does not register that comma in the succession of words. So it seems that the word marriage vocation really only took prominence in, what is that, about 1930? Yeah, about 1930. It only became a thing in 1930. Now, if you go and search, let's see, what was it? The Catechism, the Roman Catechism. Okay, so that was like late 1500s, St. Pius V. The Catechism of the Council of Trent. The word vocation is only used once, and it says it's used once in the table or in the index. In the index, it says it's only used once on page 341, and I read that stinking page over and over and over and could not find the word vocation in it. So maybe their index is incorrect. Anyways, it was with regard to the priesthood, not with regard to marriage. It was in the section on the priesthood, not the section of marriage. The Catechism of Pope Pius X only uses the word vocation in reference to the priesthood. The Catechism Explained by Spirago and Clark, that's this one. It is well worth the money. It's fantastic. It's a great spiritual aid. The word vocation means the specific calling for your state in life or your mission, what God has as the plan for your life. So, what I've been calling your primary mission, that would be your vocation. Marriage, according to these traditional texts, is not considered a vocation. In Spirago and Clark, here are the different references to vocation. He talks about St. Francis of Assisi in the 4th commandment section. Parents have no right to dictate to their children in regard to the calling they shall embrace, for a vocation comes from God. Parents cannot dispose of their children's future when they are no longer subject to them. St. Francis of Assisi would not let his father make a merchant of him. St. Rose of Lima refused to marry. So usage in that makes it sound like being a merchant is a vocation. I'll continue. You could argue against that one, that it's just saying his state in life being a layperson or getting married and not the priesthood. St. Francis of Assisi never became a priest, though. He was only a deacon. Here's another entry. But it is not wrong for one who feels himself competent to fulfill the duties of a post and knows that he may effect much good if he hold it, to endeavor to obtain it. A Catholic may aspire to the priesthood if he has a vocation, or to a place among the governing powers of the land if he possesses the necessary qualifications. That's on Catholics holding position of government office. Catechism of the Council of Trent, according to Spirago and Clark, declared the marriage of priests to be invalid. The apostles, after their vocation, left all they had. The apostles, after their vocation, after they became essentially the bishops of the church, they left all they had when they became missionaries, priests. The great prophet Eliseus Jeremias St. John the Baptist lived a celibate life. Okay, next from the Catechism explained, parents are greatly to blame who force their sons to take orders without a vocation, orders being holy orders, religious orders. For those who enter the priesthood without a true vocation are unhappy and discontented all their life long. They neglect the duties of their calling, give scandal, and finally, too often, lose their souls. Okay, now here's another one. Martha's vocation, that of active work for one's neighbor, ought to be united to Mary's vocation, that of contemplation and prayer. So speaking not about religious orders, nor about marriage, but the vocation of active work, the vocation of contemplation and prayer. So that kind of leans toward what is their particular state in life. It doesn't necessarily mean job, like employment. Oftentimes it's not employment, but we'll see more entries on that later. Another entry from the Catechism explained. Now we find that on earth, persons who follow the same calling, such as priests, teachers, etc., always hold together. Okay, so now he's talking about calling. So we, who share the same vocation to heaven with our fellow men, ought to be united to them in the bond of charity. He's talking about our duty to love our neighbor being other children of God. That's those who are baptized. You're not a child of God if you're not baptized. Anyways, he's talking about we who share the same vocation to heaven with our fellow men. So vocation, that's our calling to heaven. Another entry from the Catechism explained. During that time, he can make up his mind as to whether he has a real vocation to the religious life. If he takes the vows without feeling certain about his vocation, he has only himself to blame. So that looks like the priesthood or the monastic life. There's another entry from Catechism explained. There are various grades or states of life in human society. There are ecclesiastics, physicians, lawyers, soldiers, married people, and unmarried. Human society is like a body, each member of which has its own individual functions, or like a clock, in which all the wheels, large and small, work into one another. It is God himself who calls every man to his special state, hence we speak of it as his vocation. There it is. And God gives everyone the graces necessary to his calling. Thus, if a man feels inwardly drawn to one particular state, he ought to obey this attraction, just as the migratory birds obey the motion that teaches them to seek a warmer climate in the autumn. Those who do not follow that interior impulse, but force themselves to embrace a calling for which they feel no inclination, too often share the fate of the birds who do not journey southwards. Like them, they do not thrive. Parents ought not to compel their children to enter a profession for which they have no attraction. A sour vocation comes from God. Oh, God, help me today. As our vocation comes from God, in fulfilling its obligations, we serve him. Consequently, the duties of our state ought to take precedence of all others. In some cases, we have to leave God for God. The object for which Christ came into the world was to redeem it. And when the time came for him to fulfill the duties of that vocation, everything else was made subservient to it. Remember his words in the temple when he was 12 years of age, and how he neglected to take food while conversing with the Samaritan at Jacob's well. So Moses acted when God told him on Mount Sinai that the people had sinned grievously. He immediately left conversation with God and returned to the camp. Okay. That paragraph from Spirago and Clark, the Catechism Explained, outlines it much, much better. God gives you your particular state in life. He has a calling for you. It's not a calling to marriage. Marriage is a sacrament. It is not a vocation. Marriage is not your state in life. It's not your calling. It's a remedy for loneliness. It's mutual. It's for mutual aid. It's for unity, helping each other throughout life, but it is not your primary. It's your secondary. Okay. So I hope that clarifies things for you. But I really appreciate your comment. Thanks. Y'all have a great day. God bless you. Bye.